All right, so on your screen is it all blue? So you can see how you look. Okay. All right, cool. Well, we'll get started. So I'm Jane, as I said before. I'm a teacher. I teach in the kind of northeastern suburbs. I've been teaching VCE English for quite a long time. So this is my second year doing these, preparing for the English exam. Um, yeah. So I guess I'm going to kind of go through
What to do with the exam between now and
Good. Oh, just want to hear it.
exam, and then what to do during the exam.
What do you reckon?
What we're going to do. This sheet here is the one, so that'll have the I'm going to talk about on it, but there'll also be extra. And this exam revision to pay. Yeah. If you have any questions, as free just to butt in at any point. Don't be nervous. Don't be shy. We'll keep it informal. I guess also if I say anything that's different to the advice that you received from teachers or your school, let me know. But you know, there's not just one way to approach it. So I'll give you different options and you guys will choose what will work best for you. So preparing for the exam, is this working?
Yep.
All right. So it's not too late to boost your grades for English. Your results will be moderated against your exam. So the amount of effort that you put in between now and the exam is essential to your success. Organizing your notes and resources for each area of study is essential, having everything together. So you might have already started that process, or that might be something that you get done over the holidays, for example. Consider putting together, a poster, flashcards, graphic organizer, or a Lotus diagram. You can download templates with Lotus diagrams online. For each text that you're preparing for section A. So for section A, you might be just preparing one of the texts that you've studied, or you might be preparing two. Have you guys already decided what you're going to do for section A? So you've decided one text you're going to prepare for, one text as well. So figure out where you're going to put together all your notes for that, whether it's going to be flashcards, poster, whatever, because you want to know that text back the front, obviously. Including the quotes that you're going to memorize. So that's obviously a really essential step. Reflect on what you know and what you don't yet know, or I guess your areas that you're really strong in, and then the areas that you still want to improve on between now and the exam. So having that time to reflect, go back through your SACs, your practice exams, and go, okay, where are the areas that I still need to improve on, and have that chance to reflect. And revise each area of study, and have that chance to reflect. Ensure your quotes are really versatile and relevant to multiple themes, and think about how you're going to memorize them. Everyone has different techniques about how they memorize. For some people, it's recording and listening to them over and over. For other people, it's writing things down over and over. So pick what works best for you. I'm very visual, so I would have, things on posters that I look at all the time. So figure out what works best for you and implement that technique for memorizing quotes. Prepare vocabulary for each section that you're going to employ, and have a list there that you're reading back through again and again, because there will be key vocab for each area of study, or each area of study, and that's going to help you, especially if you get into the exam, you get a bit nervous. If you've got vocab that you can fall back on, whether it's vocab for talking about a writer's intended effect if it's for section C, or if it's vocab for talking about authorial intent if it's for section A, or if it's vocab that's relevant to your framework for section B. So having a really nice bank of vocab that you know you can fall back on if you get a bit nervous or you get a bit stuck, you're like, I'm going to say this. Find a pen. This is super obvious and seems really easy, but a lot of students don't do this, which is find a pen that you really like that allows you to write really quickly and fluently and comfortably, and buy a few of those pens. So that you're really nice and prepared for that, and you've got plenty of that pen and you're studying with that pen and you're like, yep, I know this pen's going to get me through. So that's just a little simple tip. Seek advice from your teacher, feedback from your teacher. Make sure that you have a conversation with your teacher about what you should be preparing for, where your areas of improvement lie, so that you can really have a really strong sense of those areas that you need to work on. Practice pieces should be handwritten and timed for consistency, and rereading texts is a must. So if you're just preparing one text for section A, you've just got one text to read. So that's a really important thing to do, perhaps over the holidays if you haven't already done a second reread. In terms of handwriting and timing your practice pieces, you might start by giving yourself 2 hours for each section, and then you might start reducing the time each time. So you might not quite be ready to write something in 60 minutes or 55 minutes yet, but you might go, okay, I'm going to give myself an hour and a half, and I'm just going to block out that time, write a piece, and then get feedback on that piece. And then the next time I'm doing it, I'm going to reduce the time by, say, 10 minutes or so. And then hopefully you get more and more confident, and then you can do it in 60 minutes or 55 minutes. Practice pieces and, practice exams. Create a feedback loop with your teacher. This is essential. Set yourself a window of time to write a practice piece. Submit the piece to your teacher. Have questions or thoughts written on a sticky note on the piece. So if you're like, I want to know if this if these quotes are good enough quotes, have that written on it and give it to your teacher so that they can address those things that you're thinking about. Or I want to know if my topic sentences are strong enough, or if they're getting a little bit off track or something like that. So have those questions written on your piece, give it to your teacher, and then they know what you want feedback on as well. And then take on the feedback, write down 2 or 3 key things that you can improve on for the next piece. So keep, making sure that you're writing lots of practice pieces, giving them to your teacher for feedback is absolutely essential. Every paragraph and essay you've written this year is a potential source of exam revision. So get out your old essays and reread them. Ask yourself how you could improve the essay and have a go at redrafting it. That's a really rich source of revision. Actually being able to make improvements on your own writing is a really, really good tool to help you to improve. So any questions on preparing for the exam before I move on to what to expect in the exam? It's all pretty obvious, I guess, pretty clear. So what to expect in the exam, I'm sure you know this already, but this is just kind of going across some of those obvious things, making sure we're all clear on what to expect. So there'll be 15 minutes of reading time and 3 hours of writing time in the exam. Wait till... The exam will contribute to 50% of your study score. All of the key knowledge and key skills that you've studied across the year are examinable. The exam will be in the form of a task booklet, and you'll write your answers in an answer booklet. I'm sure that you've done practice exams already and it's been in that format. The exam will consist of 3 sections that are equally weighted. The equally weighted part is really important because that tells you that you need to spend equal amount of time on each section because they're all worth the same. That's not the same with other exams, but with English, all 3 sections are equally weighted. So you have to spend the same amount of time on each. So section A will consist of an analytical response to a text and will be worth a total of 20 marks. Section B will consist of creating your own text and will be worth a total of 20 marks as well. And section C will consist of an analysis of argument and language and be worth a total of 20 marks as well. So what to do during the exam? There's not only just one way of approaching this. This is my suggested way, but again, you've done practice exams before, I'm sure, for English. So you will have maybe already implemented a technique and you'll probably already know, did that work for me? Did that not work for me? Do I need to tweak it? But this is one way to approach it. So in the first 5 minutes of your reading time, pick the prompt that you're going to write on for section A. So in section A, you'll have all the text that students can study for section A. And for each, there'll be 2 prompts. So you'll go to your text that you're preparing for and you'll look at the 2 prompts and you'll pick the one that you're like, yeah, I know I can write a good essay on that one. Okay. So you pick your prompt that you're going to do, and then you start thinking of a plan in your mind. You start thinking about, okay, how could I approach this? How could I form a really strong contention in relation to this prompt? And do I have ideas for maybe my 3 topic sentences? So it doesn't have to be super clear in your mind, but you're starting to think about it. Then you read the title and the stimuli for section B. So you know for section B, this is a new part of the exam, so there aren't heaps of exams to look back on and see what have past exams done. This is kind of a new section, but we know that you're going to be given a title and you have to use that title in your piece that you're writing, and you're going to have stimulus that you can pick and that you base your piece on. You can pick one or you can pick more than one. Okay, so there might be a quote there that really resonates with you and go, I'm going to write on that quote. Or there might be a quote and an image and you're like, I'm going to focus on both of those because that's something that really speaks to me. So think about how your piece will be related to the title and which stimulus you're going to base your piece on. Can I just ask, have you already started to think about the type of text that you might write for section B? What's the advice been from your teachers or your schools? Speech? Yeah. And is that based on your strengths? Yeah. Do you know what you're going to write or not sure? Yeah. So I guess for this one, it's up to you whether you're going to prepare a type of text that works to your strengths and you know you're going to write that type of text, or whether you wait until the exam and go, I'm going to base it on the stimuli. So I guess as long as you're prepared and you know how to write in different styles and different forms, you're okay. And you know your framework really well. You understand what it's about. The other thing for this, and I probably wouldn't recommend it, but if you don't like your framework, you can actually write on any framework. So that's another option. I'm not necessarily advocating for you to do something different to what you've studied, but that is an option as well. So yeah. So that's the first 5 minutes. Second 5 minutes, read the background information and the full text for section C. So that's the persuasive text that you're going to be given. You don't know what form of text that's going to be, but we know it's going to be persuasive. And you need to read that whole section. And then I recommend in the final 5 minutes, read it again, because it's going to be a longer text and that's the time to read it during the reading time. I recommend reading it twice and then starting with that section in the exam while it's fresh in your mind. But again, do what works for you. If that's maybe your strongest area and you're like, I'm really great with section C, I can bash that out in, 50 minutes. I'm really confident with it. Maybe you might want to end with something you're more confident with. So it depends on you, but this is one approach. So then timing in the exam during your writing time, I recommend in your first 10 minutes, write a plan for each section, because you've just thought about what you could write for section A. You've picked your prompt and you've started to think about a plan in your mind. Jot that plan down now that it's nice and fresh in your mind. You don't want to have a really good idea during reading time and then 2 hours later start to write it and be like, I can't remember what I thought of. So if you jot down a really quick plan and it's there, you're organized when it gets to that section. You've already got a plan there. So write a plan for each section in the first 10 minutes, and then in the next 55 minutes, 3 sets of 55 minutes, write your text for each section. So write your essay for section A, write your essay for section C, write your text for section B. Although I just said that in the wrong order. I recommend writing your text for section C, write your analytical essay first on section C while it's fresh in your mind. But again, you might want to start with an area that you're maybe a bit more nervous about and then finish with something strong, or the other way around. So again, work to your own strengths. And then I recommend final 5 minutes proofreading time. Some students won't need the proofreading time as much as other students. You know how you write, you know where your strengths are. So, when your examiners are assessing your exam, they are reading it as a draft. But if you know you're someone who, like, when you're writing really fast and you're a bit nervous that you sort of miss words out or forget punctuation, you might need to give yourself that proofreading time. So there are other options for timing. You might choose to spend a full hour on each section and write your plan and then your piece, and then go on to your next hour and do a plan and then write that piece, and so on and so forth. So, do what works for you. So what to do during the exam? So I've got some advice for each section. Some sections are I have a bit more detail in some sections than other sections. If you've got a question as I'm going, please feel free to stop me and ask the question. So for section A, you need to analyze the keywords in the topic. You need to brainstorm synonyms to assist your use of varied expression in the essay. Goes without saying, you do this so quickly. Yeah, like you don't have time to do it the way you would do it, when you're at home relaxed studying. It's like, you're doing this in like 30 seconds type thing. You need to make connections to big ideas and themes in the text. Don't summarize. Okay, we don't want summaries. We want analysis. Include evidence from the text to support your topic sentences and explain the relevance of the evidence in relation to your argument. This is what it means to analyze. If you're aiming for top, like you're like, yeah, I'm doing pretty well, but I'm aiming really high. The things that you might want to consider with your evidence are to really vary the types of evidence that you're going to include and that you're going to memorize. So for example, if you think about, how many students there are studying VCE English, a lot, there are going to be some quotes in the text that you've studied that are the really obvious ones. Yeah, you're like, I know that I'm going to be able to use this quote. It's a really good quote. And I'm not saying don't use that quote, but you also have to think a lot of students are probably going to use that quote. So you want to include other types of quotes as well. The less obvious quotes that maybe relate to a symbol or maybe relate to a metaphor or imagery. Those quotes that are related to, I guess, the text construction And then you can really analyze the way the author has actually constructed the text to convey and communicate meaning. So that's what's going to set apart from lots of other things like the vocab you use and, you know, how strong your arguments and ideas are. But that's one thing that you can do to elevate the quality of your essay and make it stand out amongst the others, is that some of your quotes are interesting. Some of your quotes are the less obvious quotes. You've got some examples about perhaps more minor characters as well. Be specific. Try to avoid being vague or general in your answers. Address all parts of the essay prompt. So section A, so in terms of how you're being assessed, the lower levels of essays are going to touch on the ideas in the question. They might have a little bit of evidence. They'll have limited success in writing a complete essay. Mid answers are going to answer the question in a basic manner. The knowledge of the text will be solid and it will be a full structured essay. The higher responses engage with the question or prompt and respond with insightful thoughts. This student who's got a high or a very high essay has really thought deeply about the prompt. They've discussed values, ideas, and messages in the text and structural elements of the text. So they're things like, you know, the structure of the text itself, the use of, you know, symbolism, the use of imagery, the use of foreshadowing, characterization, and you can actually use this meta language in your essay. And it's really fluent and expressive, all right? And the vocab is sophisticated and it is formal in tone. Question types. So in 2023 for section A, 15 questions had discuss as the command word at the end of the question. 12 asked whether or not you agreed or to what extent you agreed with the premise that was put to you. And 9 began with to what extent and finished with a statement about the text. 4 asked how an author conveys an idea or how a text achieved a certain thing. So that tells us that the people writing these exams love questions that start with discuss and love questions about whether you agree or to what extent you agree. So you could bank that you're probably going to get one of those types of questions in your or prompts in the exam. So to discuss means that you arrive at a certain point of view in response to the question and you explore that idea in depth. So you're actually discussing and pulling apart that idea. To what extent do you agree? That's about what leads you to land at your contention. Understanding that the text can be seen and interpreted in many ways. How is it that you've come to feel the way that you have? How have you arrived at your interpretation of the text? And then, do you agree? Your contention must be concrete, but it can't feel one-dimensional and simply prove the premise to be true. You need to, again, be able to talk about why you feel that way. If you do agree, then why? What's your evidence? You might come up with examples, but you might also consider non-examples as well. I'm sure your teachers have talked about, you know, with some of these question types, not necessarily just going, yes, I agree, or going, no, I don't agree, but you can actually qualify your answer and you can say, I agree in these circumstances. However, there's this example here that shows something slightly different. And that's showing that you've actually thought in depth about the text and you've got a more nuanced response. It's usually going to be more sophisticated rather than just being like, yep, I agree, bang, 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 here are some examples. And then you leave out the things that don't really fit with that. And then how this is a question that shouldn't, or a word in a question that shouldn't be looked over. It's about whether your response covers the construction of the text and how an author has achieved certain things through their choices. So if you get a how question, you have to be talking about how the author does this thing. Okay, I've got a little bit of a tip here, which is the magic of the word through. So if you can try and adopt the word through, you can again kind of point to how the author has done something. So through discussing his adult perspective of his childhood misadventures, Noah is able to, Noah being the author. Through the narrator's realization, Ogawa illustrates. Or you can refer to an event or evidence and then say through this, the author does X, Y, or Z. So we're discussing what the author's saying while also pointing out how they've constructed the text to achieve this. So using that word through can be a really good habit to get into. All right, that's it for section A. Does anyone have any questions about section A or how to approach it or anything I just talked about? All right, cool. Section B. So this is the section that I know the least about and everyone knows the least about. So if your teacher's saying they know all about it, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Section B is a little bit of an unknown, but there's plenty that we do know. So the use of relevant ideas drawn from one framework of ideas, the title provided, and at least one piece of stimulus material. So that's what you need to engage with. The ideas that are drawn from the framework that you've studied, or one you haven't studied, but probably do one you have studied. You must engage with the title. You must use that title for your piece. And you need to connect with at least one stimulus, but it could be more. You need to create a cohesive text that clearly connects to a clear purpose and incorporates an appropriate voice. All right. And consider your audience as well. But purpose is the most important. You need to have a really clear purpose behind this piece that you're going to write. So for example, if you know you're going to write a speech, you should be thinking already perhaps about different purposes for a speech. It could be to argue, for example, usually works really well with the speech. If you're going to go more creative, then it's probably going to be to express, but think about what you're going to express, what the options could be. Use of suitable text structures and language features to create a text, and use of fluent expression, including the appropriate use of vocab. So these are the things you're being assessed on for section B, okay? That you've connected to the framework, you've used the title, you've used at least one stimulus, you've created a cohesive text that's got a clear purpose and appropriate voice. It's got suitable text structures and language features, and it's fluent, and you've used vocabulary appropriately. So you need to think about what you're saying, your purpose, and the ideas that you're exploring. You need to think about how you're using the stimulus and the title in your piece. You need to be really deliberate with the language features that you're using, because your purpose is going to be expressed through the language. You're not going to write on your piece, oh, my purpose was this. Your examiner or your assessor needs to be able to read your piece and know what your purpose is. And you need to think about what makes a piece engaging. Yeah, your assessors are going to be reading piece after piece about all these frameworks. Think about what's going to make yours stand out, what's going to make yours engaging, what's going to make yours expressive, what's going to make yours insightful. The exam makes it clear that students must use the title, so think about how you can use that to your advantage. Consider what features and ideas that you can call upon. Do they suit a range of titles and other stimulus? Use as many practice pieces as you can get your hands on. Time spent viewing, thinking, and planning is obviously really, really important. So I haven't got heaps there for section B. Do you have any questions about section B? Have you been given a bunch of, I guess, stimulus and titles to work from your teachers? Yeah. So write as many pieces as you can in a timed situation and get feedback on them. That's the best way to prepare for section B. Section C, as I said earlier, I recommend starting with this section first, but you don't have to. Having said that, if you read it and feel a bit stuck, start with another section. This is the part where I really recommend using a dictionary because you might come across language that you're not fully across. So use your dictionary during the reading time to define any words you're not 100% sure about. Remember that you're not simply labeling techniques. You're not just saying the authors use rhetorical questions and an anecdote, and they've used emotive language, and they've used an appeal to tradition. We're not just listing off techniques. It's really about analyzing the author's arguments. Make sure you connect the language and the arguments together. Analyzing why the writer or speaker has used a particular language technique or persuasive technique is crucial. It's all about analyzing the why rather than just being able to go, yep, I can see that there's an anecdote. I can see that there's repetition. I can see that there's a rhetorical question. That's such a small part of it. It's really about why have they used that? What's the intended effect that they want to have on their audience or their reader? So for section C, know your meta language. However, if you can't identify a technique that's persuasive by name, just quote it. Just provide a quote and explain why the writers used it. What's the intended effect of it? That's completely fine. Not everything that's persuasive fits perfectly into a category. But if you can say, I know that this is persuasive and I know exactly why that they've used it, then you can analyze it perfectly well. So don't stress if you're like, oh, is this technique or this other technique? Don't stress too much. If the technique doesn't come to your mind quickly, you can always just analyze it anyway. Practice annotating pieces and use your own system for doing this. I know some students will break up the piece into 3 clear arguments, define where those arguments are, and then they might have like a different color for highlighting and finding the techniques for each argument. So do what works best for you, but like figure out now how you're going to do it. All right. Different color highlighters can be really, really helpful. Or you might go, I'm gonna highlight anything that's related to arguments and contention in one color, and then everything that's the persuasive language techniques, I'm going to highlight in another color. So figure out what works best for you. Do not read and refer back to the background information. That's essential. The amount of times I've read pieces where students have just completely not referred to the background information or the context at all is wild. It's given to you, like it's written right there. So to just ignore it and not include any of it in your introduction is such a big oversight. You just have to literally lift pieces of that context and background information and put it into your essay. So it's so easy to do. It's so important. Do not forget to analyze the visual aspects of the text. The amount of times I read this essay, I'm like, yeah, this student's got it. They've got their arguments. They've got their persuasive language techniques. It's written really well. And then I get to the end of their essay and they haven't analyzed anything visual at all. You're really not setting yourself up for success if you forget to analyze the visuals. So you must analyze the visual aspects of the text as well. It could be a heading. Yeah, there's this really really famous, really obvious section C speech that was from, I think it was the 2010 exam. Lots of people study it, and it's about biodiversity, and they only had 2 slides. So in the actual, this was an actual exam piece, there were 2 slides, and one of them was just the heading. But within the heading, there were little pictures. But a lot of students just overlooked it because they were like, that's just a title slide. There's nothing to analyze there. And so they missed that. And then there was another another slide that was more visual, but don't overlook these elements, the visual elements, because they will be there. They will be there purposefully for you to analyze. So it could be a heading, it could be a graphic, it could be a table, could be a photograph, cartoon, a slide, or even just specific formatting choices. So pay attention to things like that because they're there to be analyzed. And use your dictionary. I already said that. Students will be required to analyze the use of argument and language to persuade or position an intended audience and to share the point of view expressed in an unseen persuasive text. For the purposes of this task, language refers to written and spoken language, and visuals refers to images and graphics. Students will not be required to evaluate the relative merits or successes of the arguments. So at no point should you talk about how they've done something effectively. Okay, that's just not the task. You don't have to evaluate whatsoever. It's just analyzing. So how you assess on your understanding of contention, arguments, and point of view. Your analysis of the ways in which written and spoken language and visuals are used to present an argument and to persuade an intended audience. Use of evidence from the text to support the analysis, so you have to include quotes from that text, and use of fluent expression through appropriate use of vocab, conventions of standard Australian English. Prepare the vocab that you're going to use for section C. This is probably one of the ones where you can really prepare some little sentence starters and prepare some vocab that you're going to fall back on. So this allows, this leads, this creates, the reader is moved to, through, thus. Show an understanding of how the arguments build across the piece. That part there, the stronger students, the stronger responses will do. Okay, so your topic sentences generally, unless your school does a slightly different way, your topic sentences are usually stating what the arguments are. So if when you're stating your the author's arguments, if you can kind of show an understanding of how this argument connects to the previous argument, so you could say something like, having established the importance of protecting the environment, just say it's about the environment, the reader now shifts to possible solutions and then state what their next argument is. That's your opportunity to show that you understand they've set up this idea and now they're moving on to this other idea and they build on from one another. If you can kind of show an understanding of that, you'll do much better. Or it might be about that the author or speaker started with an anecdote. So you could be like, having established a connection with their audience through a personal anecdote, the author now or the speaker now shifts to, perhaps they shift tone, and you can talk about that and then obviously mention what their next argument is. So showing an understanding of how the techniques and how the arguments build will really help. And finally, I've got some resources here. These are super obvious. So obviously the VCAR study design, you can go back to figure out what the key knowledge and skills you need to show are. And the VCAR exam specifications, that second link there, has this sample exam, assessment criteria, past exams, and examiners' reports as well. Have any of you guys had a read through of examiners' reports yet? Yeah. So having a read through of last year's examiners' report will be really helpful for you. There'll be nothing for section B, but section A and C have not changed much. So they'll be really helpful. Any questions? Yeah, good question. So if you run out of time, I'd recommend finishing as much as you can. Another thing that students ask is, what if I'm, say, like, what if I run out of time and I'm not finished it and I'm not gonna finish it? What is recommended is that you kind of finish with dot points so that you can show where it was gonna go, if that makes sense. And you can show that you understand, I know I needed more, but I just ran out of time. So just say you're doing section A, text response essay, you get through your introduction and your 2 body paragraphs, and then you're like, oh, I've got 5 minutes left. I would recommend writing your topic sentence for your 3rd body paragraph, and then your quote, some quotes, a couple of dot points analyzing the quotes, and then a really brief, 1 or 2 sentences for a conclusion. So then the person assessing you is like, oh, I can see that they were going to do this. That was what they were going to bring in. And they can see that, like, you've just run out of time. It's not that you don't understand how to write an essay or how to finish an essay. So finishing off with dot points will help you. And if those dot points contain your key ideas, like your topic sentences or your arguments and your evidence and possibly a bit of analysis, that will help, even if it's just a dot point. Any other questions? I'll go through this one with you. I feel like I spoke really fast because I was worried about running out of time, and now there's more time than I expected. I'll go through with this one here with you and just explain what's in there. I feel like I spoke really fast because I was worried about running out of time, and now there's more time than I expected. I'll go through with this one here with you and just explain what's in there. So you will have been given, I'm sure, lots of exam revision booklets and advice from your teachers already, but this is just something to supplement that. So this might have something that's not in those. So there's an expected qualities for each section of the exam. So that's just how you're being assessed. So each section will be marked out of 10. And you can kind of go through and look at what's the difference between an 8 and a 7, or what's the difference between a 6 and an 8. And you can kind of, highlight what they're looking for at the different ranges, and you might know exactly where you're aiming for. You can think of them as percentages. So if you're averaging, say, between 70 and 75% in your SACs, you might be aiming for an 8. You might be like, I'm aiming for an 80. That's going to lift up all of my scores. That's where I'm going for. So that means that you need to go from detailed knowledge to thoughtful reading of the text, that you need to explore the ideas rather than just showing the knowledge of ideas. You need to demonstrate an understanding of the implication of the topics, and you need to explore it. And the way that you write needs to be fluent and confident. So have a look at like where you're aiming. You might be aiming for 9s and 10s. So then you need to look at that section and be like, what do I need to do to get there? So that's the first few pages. Then there's some frameworks. Now these frameworks have come from, this is for section B, they've come from the sample exam. So you've probably already got these from your teacher anyway, but they're the sample ones from this year's sample exam. So every year, VCAR will release a sample exam to give you an idea of what the exam's going to be like. So this is from the official sample exam. So this is the kind of thing that you can expect for your stimulus. So you can see the types of titles that they choose. You can see the types of stimuli. So here for framework 1, you've got an image, you've got a quote, and you've got another little quote that's kind of poetic. Each one only has one visual and has one quote, and then has like a little sort of more poetic thing. So you could probably expect that that's the kind of thing that you're expecting to get in the exam. Which frameworks have you guys studied? Protest? Yep. Play? Yep. And what did you do? Which framework have you studied? Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, so that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of things that you can expect. Then it's got some practice exams for section C. So there's one that's a newsletter for a primary school. There's one that is a from a financial institution. It's a transcript of a presentation. And it's got slides with it. You've got one that's this transcript of a speech, and you've got a slide. You've got one that is a presentation from a council. You've got another one. These are a lot of speeches, actually, I've just realized. You've got an advertorial. And you've got a review of a new cafe that was published in a local newspaper. So there's some, I guess, samples from past exams that you can use. Then I've got a vocab list for tone, for section C. A synonym word bank for the word persuade, so that you're not just repeating the word persuade or position. You've got some other words to fall back on. Some vocab for linking words, some vocab for talking about how the writer argues something, and some sentence starters as well. So they might help you or they might not, but they could help you with, writing your vocab banks. And then there's some tips at the end about what to do the night before, what to do the morning of, and just some more tips about how to prepare. I think the most important one there is use your dictionary. You can use it during reading time. So if there are any words that you don't understand in a prompt or in section C, use your dictionary. And your handwriting doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be legible. So as long as your assessor can read it, don't worry about making it your perfect writing. You got to be as quick as you can. And that's it. That's all I have. I think that this presentation is going to be put up on the library website. So keep an eye out for that if you want to use it. And yeah, I've got those ones that you can take away as well.